Welcome to Impact Farming, where we introduce you to the people and ideas that will have a massive impact on your farming operation. Brought to you by Farm Marketer. Sit down, start the engine, and let's roll with today's show.
Hello everybody, and welcome back to this week's episode of the Impact Farming Show. This week we have Chris Delaney joining us once again.
Hello.
Welcome back.
Thank you very much. It's wonderful to be here.
It's wonderful to have you again. Chris is going to be sharing the topic of his upcoming book. We are going to be chatting about the 20 biggest mistakes that people make when they're doing succession planning.
Exactly, yeah.
So a second book, I'm so excited.
Oh, I am too. I mean, I have a third one in mind. It's coming down the pike in 2021 probably. But
nice.
This book is a follow-up on my first book, which was the Naked Opus, Growing Your Family Wealth for the Long Term. And that was a process-oriented book. This book is going to be about identifying mistakes that you as customers of estate planning services, but also more importantly as people conceiving your estate plan, make all the time. That lead to inefficient or suboptimal or just not good outcomes. And if you understand where that mistake is coming from or the decision-making bias that you have that leads to that mistake, you may be able to manage that process so that you end up with better outcomes at the end of the day and avoid the mistake if you can. So
I love it, and yeah. I can't wait to read it.
Oh, good. It'll be fun. It's been fun writing it.
Yeah, I believe it. So why don't we get you to tell the audience a little bit more about you in case they haven't tuned into our other episodes, and then that'll give them a little bit of a understanding about who you are and what you do.
Sure. So I'm by training a lawyer. I was called to the bar here in Ontario in 1991. I've been practicing variously in litigation and in estate planning since that time. But for the last probably 20 years, I've been exclusively in the estate planning and business and farm succession space. And 15 of the last 20 years, I've been in the financial services industry with Canada's two top financial brokerages, working with their clients in the southwestern Ontario area on succession planning and on wealth transition planning. Now, I don't do that anymore. I wrote the book and I speak based on that at events around the country, around North America. I hope to do so with the new book as well. I do a little bit of teaching as well in the finance area. So I try to bring a kind of a rich conversation to the field of wealth transition and family wealth transition planning as it stands in 2019, 2020. It's a space that has changed dramatically in the 30 years that I've been a lawyer, and I think we're really at a new paradigm for the planning. I think it's going from event-based planning where people didn't have big estates and they were just really trying to efficiently and simply, quickly move assets from one generation to the next, now where the boomer generation has been wildly successful at creating wealth, whether it's farm wealth or off-farm wealth. Either way, it's the same conversation. And they need to find strategies and mindsets to avoid the destruction of that wealth as it transitions from their generation to the next generation. So I've tried to identify 20 opportunities, 20 errors that I've seen over the years that people have made, primarily in their decision making, and what led them to that decision, and why they might have been making decisions that way, and how they can modify that decision so they have a better outcome at the end of the day. Okay. So that's where I am right now. Yeah.
Do you want to, for context, because I really like bringing in the FEA model, the 3-circle. Do you want to review that really quick?
Sure.
As a basis, and then we can hop into some of those mistakes.
Okay, and that's a good model to work from when you are a family farm. So a family farm is and we've talked about this in previous shows that we've done. It's a business at the end of the day, but it's a family business, and it's got the other unique component to it that is sometimes unique from the perspective of other family businesses that are non-agricultural, is that there's a strong legacy component to it as well.
Absolutely.
It's a very strong desire to keep it in the family, and that's a rich opportunity for planning. It's not a problem, it's an opportunity for planning. So there has evolved over time a way to approach these family enterprises like a family farm that have this really rich dynamic model that they're working with, so that we maximize the opportunity for success on that planning. And the three-circle model is one of those models. And what it acknowledges is that a family farm has at least three, but three for sure, distinct areas of influence and decision-making and communication that have unique properties associated with them, but which cross over into each other very much in varying degrees. So the first circle is the family. Those are the people that, obviously, the parents and the children, they're obviously family, grandchildren are family, but who else is a family member? Is it a spouse? What if somebody's not going to get married? What if it's a common law partner? Are they family? So we have to have a definition of family that's sufficient to bring in everyone who's a stakeholder, and then that circle has its own decision making and its own communication styles to make it successful as a family. The other circle so the next circle, I guess, is the ownership circle. So quite apart from the family, there's going to be an ownership group as well, that may or may not include people that are in the family. So for example, mom and dad own the farm, and they are the owners. They're definitely in the family, but there are also family members who aren't yet owners, right? Then we have the management circle, and those are the people that day to day are making decisions about the operation of the farm or business, but they may or may not be family members. They may or may not yet be owners. They may be somebody who's been absolutely critical to the farm operation, but is neither in the family and will never be an owner. And what role do they play? And when we realize, and each of those three circles is going to have its own communication structure. It's going to have its own perspectives. It's going to have its own decision making. So governance, we often refer to that as governance. It's going to have its own governance model as well. They might be similar. They might be dramatically different. But if we don't acknowledge that each of them is going to have independent decision-making and independent needs, then we're really risking the model when we put it all together. So if we look at, and I can't do it here, but kind of on my book cover here, I've done it a little bit. I'm not Huck, I'll cover the book there. But the picture of this flower is actually intended to show that. This is the three-circle model. I'm using different colors, but you can see that, the orange shades into the yellow and that shades into the green. Well, if something happens over here in the green area, it's going to cause waves over in the orange area, right? The problem is that the orange area had its own communication structure. It has its own perspective. What came over from the green, the tidal wave that came over from the green, might actually cause a lot of destruction in the orange area. So once we've identified these three areas of planning, we can build a structure that makes sure they can work together cohesively as well. And that that's an enterprise view of the family business, of the family farm, and that allows optimal opportunities for transition success, is looking at it that way. So instead of just looking at it as whoever owns the gold gets to plan with the gold, we're going to look at how decisions made about planning with that gold affect the family and affect the ownership, as well as the business side, as well as the ownership circle. So it's a system. It's a systems approach to the planning. That's really at its core, what the family enterprise model is. It's looking at it as a system, that a decision over here is going to have implications for conduct over here and outcomes over here. And if we don't look at it that way, we're really doing a disservice to the entity itself and the system itself. We put it at risk if we don't do that.
I love it, and that's why I keep on bringing it up every single time that we chat and in different interviews that I do, because I think it's a mind shift.
Yes.
switch in the way that we think. It's bigger than just the farm. If we're only thinking about just the farm, that's so narrow. There's those 3 circles, and everything needs to be taken care of. Right?
Absolutely, because we've discussed this previously. You know, if you have as a goal that the outcome of your planning is that the farm moves from one generation to the next successfully, you may also have a goal that whatever planning you do, your kids get along afterwards and can get along afterwards. Those aren't mutually exclusive goals. Those are goals that have to function together. And so if you just transition the farm to 2 of 3 children, you've served one goal, you haven't served the other goal. And that's where these systems kind of come together, and these different decision-making and communication environments come together and have to be managed thoughtfully, and we have to acknowledge they're there and then plan for them independently. So yeah, I think you're absolutely right that once we appreciate that system does exist, it creates an obligation and a responsibility to plan in each system, which then creates an obligation and a responsibility to understand what are these systems, who's in here, what is it about them that makes them unique, what do they need to succeed, what will cause them to fail to thrive, and we begin to plan around that. So it is a lot more complex, but so one example I could give you, is if you have just a really quick example, is if you have a transition where you're moving assets from one generation to the next, you might want to think about a shareholder agreement and what the parameters of those that shareholder agreement is going to be. Well, that's going to require you to understand what the goals of the various shareholders are, and particularly if something critical and not nice, like somebody dying or becoming disabled, happens in the ownership circle, because the shareholders are likely to be family members as well. But that's a business decision, but they're also family members. And their love for one another is not going to necessarily result in good business decisions. Good business decisions aren't necessarily going to promote their love for one another either. So once we begin to acknowledge that it's a bunch of elastics all wound up into a great big ball, we actually end up with better decisions at the end of the day. Yeah.
Okay, love it. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah.
So when it comes to succession planning, I know you're working on a list of 20 for your book, and we're excited to read that. We're not going to give them all away here. I'm going to get you to share the top 4 that stand out in your mind, the 4 biggest mistakes that farm families make when it comes to succession or transition planning that we call it nowadays.
So there are 20 at least. So choosing, and so this is my disclaimer. What is the worst mistake versus the least worst mistake? That's not what I'm trying to do here. I'm really looking at the mistakes in terms of the frequency that they occur and the damage they can do.
Excellent.
And so the damage might be to the family, which is hard to quantitatively measure, but sometimes the damage will be quantitatively measurable. So what I might choose as the worst might not be what your viewers will choose as the worst. It depends whether they're quantitative or qualitative, have a quantitative or qualitative mindset in their planning, right?
Yes.
I tend to view estate planning and business transition planning as fundamentally a qualitative process, and that the quantitative analysis has to serve the qualitative parts of it. I think you get 100-year planning if you do that. You're successful across multiple generations if you do that. So there's my disclaimer. So what I think are the top 4 might not be what other people think are the top 4. Fine print. That's the lawyer in me. So I think
Isn't it?
I always have to apologize for that.
Do I need to sign a disclaimer?
No, you're good.
We're okay?
Yeah, it's understood.
Okay.
That's implicit.
Good.
I think the number 4 one would be that we tend to view our planning as an event rather than as a process.
Okay.
All right. So, and how does that crop up? So it tends to crop up somewhat arbitrarily. You do a will. Let's say you do a will when your children are born, right? That's an event. And if you have children, you should have a will. If you're an adult, you should have a will. 50% of adult Canadians, 50% of adult North Americans, for that matter, don't have a valid will.
Wow.
When do people do their wills? They tend to do it when there's an event in their life, right? So they have kids, and the primary reason they did the will was they want to be ordered around their children. They might have even only been thinking about appointing a guardian for their new arrival, and that was the only reason they thought of the will, which you can do through most wills, right? So they were thinking tactically, and they were thinking of an event instead of a process. And the process really is about the creation of the wealth and the orderly transition of that wealth from that day through to the time they actually pass away. And so we tend to view them on an event horizon. So the next time I look at planning my will might be when my kids go to college, or when one of my children get married, for example. And that's often the advice we're given. How often should I review my will? Well, what are the key events in life?
Okay.
And what I'm suggesting to your listeners and your viewers is that they, yes, definitely do that as a minimum, but they actually could get a higher level of planning, and it avoids some mistakes if they view it as a process. So maybe annually you sit down with your family and you have a meeting for an hour where you say, okay, here's the estate plan, for example.
Okay.
Here's what it's predicated on. Here are the expectations and the goals that I have. Let's share what's happened in the year since the last time we did this. And everybody shares that information. Now, that's hard for some people.
Oh,
right?
boy.
I know.
Yeah.
But so I had a meeting once with a family that was doing something. It wasn't ag, but they were doing a business succession. And I was with the husband and the wife. We were talking about business succession. I was going through the facts with them, and I kept noticing that one of their adult children had these very strong connections to the southern U.S. They were down there all the time. They had a girlfriend now that was down there. And I said, is this kid even interested in taking over this business? Oh, yeah. They're going to do that. So I said, can I have permission to talk to the adult members of your children, right? Your adult children. They said, oh, yeah, sure. I think they'll tell you what we've just told you. So I meet with the adult son, as it was in that particular case. I said, you're spending a lot of time in South Carolina. What's going on? He goes, well, I haven't told my family yet, but the girl I'm dating, we're going to get married, and we're moving to South Carolina, right? Well, that
throws a wrench in it.
Yeah, they didn't even keep it. They sold it within a year. And it was a happy event. This was information they didn't know. But families assume they're good about communicating, and they're not necessarily that great about communicating. The course that it wasn't any magic that I did. I just asked the questions. I talked to the child, and the assumptions on the planning were not the reality. Process helps that come out. If you're event planning, it doesn't come out that way. You end up doing a will sort of in a void of information. Let's say, so what could go bad with that? Let's say I had done a will when I was 40. The assumption was that all of my children wanted to be involved in the business equally. Mm-hmm. And then on my 45th birthday, I'm in a car accident, or I have a stroke, and I'm no longer able to change my will. I can't change my plans anymore. But the reality now is they don't want to be involved in the business.
Okay.
If I were process-oriented, I'd probably have a more authentic will and a more authentic transition plan, because the period in between the update and the changes and what's going on was less arbitrary and probably less time period for that matter. So looking at it as a process is much more healthy than looking at it as an event. Event driven is, at a minimum, you should be doing that. So update your will when your health changes, when your financial fortunes change, for better or for worse, because that changes outcomes too. Good, if you're making lots of money and your assets are growing in value, that requires a change in planning or a revisiting of planning just as much as if it goes the other way. And people don't often view it that they just look at bad things happen. Good things cause problems too, or could cause problems in expectations. So if you have a regular process of going back and taking a look at where we are, where do we want to go, and what's the a gap in between those things, that actually ends up with better planning. So the problem number 4 would be, or mistake number 4, would be viewing estate planning or family business transition or farm succession planning as an event rather than a process. Process requires communication, requires decision making, and requires really a team of people around you. Event planning, it's not quite the same.
Communication.
Say it one more time.
Communication.
3 times, yeah, absolutely.
I almost felt like I should be clicking my heels too.
Well, it's like buying property, right? The real estate agents will tell you what's the biggest driver of value.
Location.
And with farm succession planning, communication.
There we go.
Yeah, and it sounds trite. It sounds like it's advice that everybody knows, but everybody does know it, and so very few people actually take purposeful steps to make sure they are communicating.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, so that's number 4.
Yeah.
What would you say the third one?
The third one, and so this is kind of an amorphous, but then I'll give you a practical example, is not spending enough time. We're talking about estate planning here. So if you're looking at an estate plan, there are many decisions that you have to make. So who's my executor going to be? Who will be my beneficiaries? When will they receive the wealth under the will? Is it when they turn 18? Is it when they turn 25? Is it ever? Am I going to tie it up for a long, long time? On what conditions? What might they have had to have done before they received the wealth? So all those are examples of decisions that we have to make. What I have found over the years is that clients, don't spend enough time understanding what it is they're trying to achieve with that particular decision. So let me give you an example. It's not choosing an executor is a really important decision. It is probably the most important decision you will make with a will. The decision to do a will is the most important decision, and which is shocking, I even have to say that.
Decision number 2.
Decision number 2 is who is going to administer this will for me. So a will, an estate plan, is essentially a trust. And a trust is a relationship. Your executor is going to be the legal owner of the assets of your estate for the benefit of your beneficiaries. Okay. So oftentimes when you're meeting with clients, or if you were thinking about doing your estate plan, if I were to ask you, what do you think the qualities of a good executor are? What would you, and I'm putting you on the spot, off the top of your head, Tracy, what do you think they might be?
Well, they should be fair, and they should be thoughtful. They should...
You are way ahead of the curve.
Am I?
Well, because most people, I do this at presentations. I say, what do you think of with estate planning? And what do you think of when you're choosing an executor? And they often think, well, they should be good with money, they should understand finances, they should be aware of taxes.
Funny I didn't go there.
You did not go, and that's probably because you've interviewed enough people like me.
Yeah, maybe.
You're getting it.
You guys are rubbing off on me.
You are way ahead of the curve. And that's because, so when I do presentations, I will, in the crowd, I will say, what do you think of when you think of estate planning? And I go around the room and without fail, people say wills, insurance, taxes, well, those are the big 3 usually. Wills, insurance, taxes. Sometimes people will say powers of attorney, things like that. Interestingly enough, if it even is mentioned, it's mentioned at the end, and very few people put their hand up about it. They think about the beneficiaries, getting wealth to the beneficiaries. So estate planning is also about the beneficiaries because it's a relationship between the executor and the beneficiaries. So when you're choosing an executor, they're going to have potentially a multi-year, particularly if you use some trust.
Oh, yes.
They're going to have a multi-year relationship with your beneficiaries. So should they understand wealth? Yeah, they probably should. Can you hire somebody that can teach them about wealth? Yes, you can. Do they need to know the law? Probably not, because they will have a lawyer that will advise them on the law. But are they going to have to understand your beneficiaries? Absolutely. And what efforts did you make when you were putting your will plan together to introduce? Do they even know the beneficiaries? Do they know the differences between the beneficiaries? Do they have any relationship with the beneficiaries? can they handle that relationship after you've gone away? Right? That's a different question altogether as well. So understanding that it's a relationship and understanding that they are there to promulgate the enrichment of your children and your grandchildren or your great-grandchildren, whoever your beneficiaries are, your heirs are. The trustee really is there in part to make sure that that wealth is preserved and grown for those beneficiaries and protected for them, but they also have a relationship with those beneficiaries. So if you have a trust in your will that says, I want the trustee to do this for the benefit of the beneficiaries, they should have a relationship. They should have an understanding of who that beneficiary is. Most people don't do that. They appoint an uncle who had some, some tax training or some, some technical skill set. Important, valuable, but do they really know who that beneficiary is? So choosing a trustee or an executor has a lot more to it than simply choosing somebody who's good at math or good at finance. There's so much more that they need to bring to that, because it is a long-term relationship. It's one that could go on for many, many, many years, and you want that to be a productive and growth-oriented, abundant relationship as opposed to one that's going to be corrosive. The trustee shouldn't just view their role, unless you structure it that way, they shouldn't just view their role as protecting the money from the beneficiary. It should be to promote the best interests of the beneficiary. To do that, you need to know what those best interests are. How are they going to learn that? And are they willing to learn that? Are they willing to invest in the beneficiary with their time in order to make this trust work as well? So I just have found over the years that that's a big mistake. That is... And really that was part of the broader mistake of not giving enough thought to who on these decisions. Another decision we have to make sometimes through our will is who the guardians of our children will be, right? It's not uncommon to see that, so if you have a sibling, let's say you have a sister and she's married, it's not uncommon that your sister and her husband will be appointed as the guardians, because you're viewing them as a family unit and you want your minor children to go to them, right? Yeah. Well, what happens if they get divorced? What happens if he develops a substance abuse issue or a gambling issue or turns out to be a real jerk? Okay. It wasn't who you thought it was going to be, right? You haven't really thought about what it was you wanted to get out of that guardianship relationship, because a lot of people simply tie themselves to their familial choices. I have a sister, that's who it should be. But what is it you really want for the kids? Is it, do you want a similar lifestyle, similar goals, similar values, similar mindset? Whew. I know, there's a lot. There's a lot that goes into it. And people just...
This is very thoughtful. And if you think of it, I mean, it's your children's future.
Absolutely.
Heaven forbid that this has to come into play, but that's your children's future.
It's your children's future more than the money is, because there's the moral guidance, there's the marshmallow test, right? Like you've probably heard of that.
I was just watching a video with that in there yesterday.
Yeah, that's a great thing. Yeah. So the marshmallow test basically is, and correct me if I encapsulate this incorrectly, if you've got a child, they did these tests and they had children in the test rooms, they put a marshmallow in front of them, and the children that had learned or were able to, they basically said to them, if you leave this marshmallow here for 15 minutes, we'll give you another marshmallow, and you'll have two, and then you can do whatever you want with them. And the kids who could go the 15 minutes and wait for the second marshmallow, over the longitudinal timeline of their lives, had better marriages, succeeded in their careers, built better wealth, and were generally happier and physically healthier people at the end of the day. Yeah. The kids that grabbed the marshmallow immediately and stuffed it into their mouth, they did not fare so well by comparison, right?
Yes.
By a wide margin, if you watch that video. It's significant. Well, where do we learn forbearance? And where do we learn delaying our gratification?
Well, and that's abundance and scarcity mindset. Is when I was watching it yesterday, it was about that.
Yeah.
If you grew up in a household where money was scarce and you were presented with a marshmallow, you're going to grab it right away because stuff leaves quickly.
Stuff leaves quickly.
If you grow up in an abundant household or mindset, if there's a marshmallow there, you're a little more okay leaving it because you know it's going to be there.
It'll be there.
We have marshmallows all the time.
Somebody else might need it.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah. And for the very same reasons, they will have healthier, happier, more productive lives.
Right.
Which, isn't that what we want for our children?
Absolutely.
That's what we want. So it's thoughtful little things like that. So thinking about the nature of the relationships that we are creating through our wills is something we don't give enough time to. And if we do give more time to it, we have to. So, and I'm sure a lot of your clients, you know, they go in, the lawyer says, okay, who's going to be your guardian? And they go, my sister or my brother. Okay, and the name goes down, and there's no further questions asked, right?
Yeah.
That may or may not. I
was going to say, who out there is putting that much thought into that? And if you are, amazing. If not, great information.
Yeah. Be amazing, and
that
take
is
it to that
amazing.
level.
Yeah.
So that's problem number 2.
Okay.
The next biggest mistake, I would say, is that we are too passive about the information that we receive as it regards our estate planning, and we don't actually get engaged. So I did a presentation a few years ago, not far from here actually. It was for farmers, and a farmer came up to me at the end of the presentation, and he said, you know, I went to my lawyer the other day, and I asked him, I said, I'm ready to do some estate planning, and you know, how can you help me? And the lawyer said, well, when you know what you want, come in and we'll put it on paper, right? And you're nodding. Most people at home are nodding, going, okay, well, what's wrong with that, right? And he goes, the problem was, I don't know what I want.
Yeah.
and nor should you. Like, you don't need to know
that's the scary tactics. Part, I think, where a lot of people just end up freezing because, okay, well, I'll come back when I know.
And it's not
10 years later.
10 years later, and 10 years, the passage of 10 years, like a lot of time goes by, a lot of options for planning and opportunities go off the table in that 10-year period as well, right? You know, if you're trying to get a marriage contract enforced, it's much easier before the marriage than it is afterwards. 10 years of marriage, it's almost impossible to retroactively get something like that, right? So time it heals wounds, but it also, you know, it's the princess and the pea sometimes, right? That pea is, over time, we still feel that. It's not going away. It's harder to move the mattresses away. It's easier with one mattress than with 100. So don't be afraid to deal with it at the outset. So if we're not engaged in our own planning, and that's really what that was the issue for that particular farmer. He respected the lawyer so much, which is wonderful, you should, that he really didn't go in confident that I want this, and I don't mean I want a trust that does this and this. It means I want my kids to not have wealth be a destructive force in their life. I want my kids to be able to get along at Christmas. I want the wealth to be distributed as financially equally as possible. And I want to talk about that. If you know what those things are that you want, your professional advisors are going to go, thank you. Thank you so much, because you're making their job so much easier, and then they can really shine. Then they can add their value, which is incredibly powerful. You know,
that makes sense.
And when they have to do everything, or they have to guess a little bit, or they're not aware to ask, and that can happen, you know, quite inadvertently, that causes problems, and it makes you not trust the advice you're getting sometimes too, which should never happen. They're very good at what they do. That was, you know, that's a long way of saying, really, you need to be engaged, and if you're not engaged in your planning, then why would you expect anyone else would be particularly engaged, right?
Yes.
So take ownership of it, take agency of it, and so that requires that front end effort. And we've talked about this in previous shows, where you have to understand your goals, you have to understand the objectives that you want, and your professional advisors will build the recipes for action and the tactics that you need to finish it off. But you really need to do the work on the front end on that. And then, so, you know, that might mean that, I just shared. So, and then the biggest mistake of all, can we go to that?
Do we need a drum roll?
The biggest mistake is, and there's a variety of different ways of saying this, but procrastination is probably the biggest mistake, right? Why do people procrastinate? Why do you think people procrastinate? I know you're interviewing me, but...
I have boiled that down to two things when it comes to farm families and succession planning, in my mind, because I don't have children, but I pretend to be a mother, right? And I'm multiple children, let's say some don't farm, some do. Okay, there's two things. One, I haven't a hot clue where to even start. It seems so big and complicated, and there's lawyers, and I don't even know how I'm going to take care of the non-farming child, because if I give them a piece of land, then the farm can't support itself. I just don't know how this is going to work.
Right.
So I don't have the information. That's number one. Number two, I procrastinate because I have a feeling it's not going to be fair and equal. And my goodness, who wants to have that conversation?
So if we take both of those, and they're very similar, the two reasons you think people procrastinate, I would agree. If we distill what that really is about, people are afraid. They're
totally.
And so
I'm frozen. I'm frozen thinking about this.
You are paralyzed.
Yes.
And it's not the complexity. It's that the decision you make is going to, and you're going to blame it on the complexity. The decision you make is going to hurt somebody that you care about.
Yeah.
And you're afraid. You're so afraid of that. So one of the big mistakes we make in planning, and it really goes to this, is assuming that we plan up here in our heads, and that we're rational, and that all the decisions we make are rational. They aren't. We plan down here in our gut and in our hearts. That's where we do most, that's where we start most of our planning. And we are not rational down here. We are motivated by fear. We are
I believe that.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
So there's a book, a really great book by a guy named Daniel Kahneman called Thinking Fast and Slow. And Kahneman and another guy named Amos Tversky, Kahneman won the Nobel Prize for it. Tversky, I think, had passed away. I don't think they give the Nobel Prize posthumously. I think you have to live to get it. So he died of cancer, unfortunately, before they awarded it. But they came up with a theory that basically suggested that people are averse to risk. And that seems to make sense, but let's frame how that comes out. If they're actually significantly more averse to risk than they are to an equal gain. So if I were to suggest to you that if you did this, you would have a chance of getting 100 units of happiness, or the other outcome that could occur is 100 units of pain.
Yes.
You will be almost 3 times more averse to the pain than you will to the gain.
Right.
But there are equal amounts of pain and equal amounts of gain. But we as humans are 2 to 3 times more averse to the pain than we are to a similar gain. So in a planning environment, if I tell you this planning will make you 100 units happy, but if you don't do it, it'll make you 100 units sad, you're going to be more inclined not to do the planning because you fear the sad, the outcome is potentially sadness and pain. You will be 2 to 3 times more averse to that particular outcome, which will paralyze you. You will not do it as a result. So a lot of us suffer from that bias. There's really great things we can do with our planning, but there's also some risk. And we value the risk. We're more averse to the risk than we are attracted to the gain. Even though the risk is less likely to occur, it's not going to be as much, but we fear that tremendously. And that's irrational. That is an irrational thing. If we understand that, then we actually end up doing better planning, possibly, at the end of the day. It's pretty baked into who we are as humans. So it's hard to fight it. But if we understand that it's there, and that's especially true in dynamic situations. So, and that was the analysis that they did. They actually looked at investment advising in choosing stocks in dynamic situations. I can't think of anything that's more dynamic and more uncertain than estate planning and farm succession planning. Like, it's filled with emotions, it's filled with uncertainties, so many moving parts. You don't know what the outcome's going to be. That's, like you said, you've got so many choices to make.
And I know the outcome right now, though, because it is what it is, and we're all doing, we're just going fine. It's fine. It's all fine. Why do I want to rock that boat? So
you become risk averse and you don't do it.
Yes.
And that's procrastination, right?
Yeah.
So your fear is coming out as risk aversion.
Right.
But once we understand, if we can get into what you're actually afraid of, you know, what it is you're actually worried about, and so that might be a coach, it might be a mediator you work with, maybe a family enterprise advisor, maybe your lawyer or accountant has that skill set or is prepared to do that. They can actually tease that out of you. And if you can appreciate that it's fear that's motivating you, and then assess what the likelihood of that, the basis of that fear. So maybe the fear is based on an experience your parents had, and you never really realized you'd learned it, but you learned it.
Yeah.
And you're reacting to it, right? Like, I've met clients over the years working in the financial services industry who came through the Depression, and their parents came through the Depression.
Yeah.
They'd be sitting on tremendous amounts of wealth. They were never going to have to worry about being frugal and where their next meal was coming from. Yet they spent their money as if they had no money. Right? And so they had this really negative relationship with their wealth because of what they had learned from their parents and maybe even themselves, depending on their own age. We really are the product sometimes of our environment.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
So where's that fear coming from? Is it even your fear, or was it somebody else's fear that got transferred to you? And when you sit and face it and you go, I don't know why I'm afraid of that, that actually gives you the opportunity to break free of that fear. Because if we understand our fears, we understand our motivation. So I believe procrastination is really based on trust. We don't trust what's going to happen. Because we fear some of the dynamics that are going on the inside. So if you're procrastinating with your estate planning, be certain that that time is taking away opportunities. So let's say life insurance. I know I've harped on this, but it is the perfect example. Today, to buy life insurance is cheaper than it will be 10 years from now.
Right.
Because 10 years from now, you might not qualify, or you might be really sick, or it's just going to be prohibitively expensive, right? But that's an option. And so if you ignore something like that, or let's say the marriage contract we were talking about, or making sure the kids do a shareholders agreement, if they're entering into ownership now, and you want to do a shareholders agreement, it's much easier to do it now with a shared values base than it is 10 years from now, when experiences and expectations have become baked in. Again, procrastination steals opportunities. Are there going to be hard discussions? Maybe. Is it going to be difficult space sometimes? Maybe. Is it going to be hard for you to make a decision and settle in on a plan? Maybe. But it's going to be a lot harder if you procrastinate and your options and planning opportunities go on by the wayside. It'll be even worse at the end of the day. So don't procrastinate.
And really, and again, I think of so many people I know, really, how easy is it sitting there with that black cloud over your head and the unspoken tension in the farm families?
Yes.
Because the 40-year-old, 50-year-old, 60-year-old son wants to know what his future holds.
Yep.
And mom and dad aren't talking about it.
Yep.
How easy is that black cloud, that weight on the shoulders?
Well, right? I think what starts to happen is if they aren't prepared to move on that, the person who's experiencing that starts to build their own narrative around that. So they start to, they don't actually think that mom and dad are afraid of the outcomes here, that that they're worried about the uncertainty of some of the planning. They begin to say they don't trust me, or I'm bad at this, or they favor this person over here, which creates a whole bundle of other problems.
Resentment.
Unintended.
Oh my goodness, yeah.
Completely fictional outcomes. But you know, if I believe it, is it fiction?
No, everything in our heads is the truth,
exactly,
right?
yeah.
Well,
it's not a lie if I believe it's true.
And isn't that a little bit, and really, is that not the devil we know is better than the devil we don't?
Right.
I'm just comfortable dealing with things how they are right now.
Yep.
That black cloud, that weight on my shoulders, the tension between the siblings.
Sure.
That's normal. That's a lot easier to deal with.
That's a good point.
That's normal.
It's normal. Every family has it.
And I'm not saying mine in particular, but every family has their dynamic. And
sure they do.
Many farm families, because these conversations aren't happening, they have that. And if it doesn't get dealt with, it's going to blow up.
It will blow up.
And you know what? You're taking the easy path here.
Yeah.
And what's happening at the end?
Well,
and you can have a few hard conversations.
Right.
And then just get rid of that black cloud, right? Work through it.
And that becomes, and that's a legacy.
Sorry, I'm a little bit passionate about this.
You should be, because this is, you know, I think this is an existential threat to a lot of farm succession planning. It will make your farm, it will put it at risk from being a successful legacy entity. It may have to be sold or broken up because people will be so busted up about what actually occurs. I also think, and you raised a really good point, I think it is succession planning is our responsibility. And we might fail at it, but we shouldn't fail because we didn't try.
Right.
You know, sometimes you can only deal with what you have to deal with. You deal with the cards you're dealt, right? But that doesn't mean we shouldn't play at the table. And if we fail to get engaged at all, if we fail to participate, if we procrastinate and just let it happen to us, we can't really complain about what happens at the end. And do you really want your legacy to be, you know, if you came back 30 years later and your kids sat down with you and say, you know, what was your gift to us? You know, we don't talk to each other. The money's all gone. The farm is gone. Was that what you wanted? And they say, well, you know, my gift to you was I tried nothing and it didn't work. Is that really the gift you want to give? And that's what your kids are going to learn. That's the legacy they're going to learn. Or that's the legacy they're, as a planning model, that they're going to have to learn to overcome.
Yes.
And it just gets harder and harder because, you know, we love our parents and we respect our parents and respect our grandparents, and they were successful. Like the farm is successful, right? There's a pride that goes with that. And so it's very hard to reject what our parents did and the decision. That's a hard thing to say. In any family, that's hard. But that's what would be required. You'd have to, your kids someday would have to say, well, that was one of the most foolish things that was ever done. That's a hard thing to say. And they might not say it, and they may repeat it as a result because they don't know any better. It does happen. And that's unfortunate. So
we're here to change that.
We're here to change that. And, and the happy thing about this, Tracy, is it can be changed. Like this is not a foregone conclusion. There's no predestination on this. We're choosing the path that we want to take our families down on their planning. And so I would say that is well worth the investment.
Absolutely.
To take it down a better path. Yeah. So, you know, procrastination, I know that you're going to read that in every book. Everyone's going to say, oh, don't procrastinate, get started. In every presentation I've ever done, that is one of the concluding things. And people actually do sort of go, yeah, you're right, I need to get started. So you go grab your accountant, go grab your lawyer, and start to have these conversations, because yesterday was the best day to get started, today's the next best day.
Love it.
Yeah.
Okay, so those are the 4 biggest mistakes.
I think so.
And I wanted to ask you the one piece of advice.
Yeah.
But I think you might have, did you?
I did. I just finished on that.
Yeah. I mean,
fearlessly get started.
Yeah.
Go and get started. Start somewhere.
Absolutely.
Don't be afraid of the complexity. So you said, you know, we don't know where to begin. Begin somewhere. And if I can offer a little bit of advice, begin where you're comfortable.
Okay.
Begin where you know your family has strength and you know that everyone agrees, right?
Okay.
Begin there. That's a great place to begin. That helps you build strength as a family. And when you have to start to meander into conversations where not everybody agrees, you're coming from a position of strength, and you're coming from a position of where you've tried to build some comfort around where we're going with this. Don't start with the most difficult issues first.
How about start with farm business meetings?
Yeah.
Farm family business meetings,
right.
Starting there, right?
How do we succeed in this business? Everyone can get on board that, right?
A typical business, non-agriculture, always has management meetings, monthly meetings,
sure.
All of those meetings. I mean, that would be a great place to start, right? Instead of, we haven't had a communication rhythm in our family,
right.
And now all of a sudden, we want to talk about succession planning. Well, my goodness, we're trying to climb Mount Everest when we could have started down at the base camp, right?
Well, then what's the old joke? You know, how do you eat an elephant?
One piece at a time,
right?
Yeah.
So start with where you can have aligned success, and that is where, you know, non-farm children are equally aligned with the success of the farm. They're not wishing for the failure of the farm, right? So there's alignment. Everyone wants to see it succeed on the business side, maybe for different reasons, but they all agree on it has to succeed. So that's a great place to start and build skills there. Absolutely. That will also build, and when I say skills, I'm talking about communication and decision-making skills. That will give you the opportunity to see who's good at what, who has, you know, what communication blinders on, and, you know, that's going to transmute over into the family side of the planning. How do we cope with that? So if you've got a farm child who's an A-type, very opinionated personality and sees everything in the context of conflict, jumping right into succession planning in a family meeting is a recipe for disaster, right?
Yes.
So you want to manage that. And so maybe you have to have somebody come in and help you manage that. But that knowledge is incredibly powerful. That gives you, it's better for them too, because it helps them be a better participant in the wealth transition, a more successful participant in the wealth transition. And that starts to break down some of the barriers too, because usually that kind of a person is coming to the table like that from a position of fear as well. They're worried about what their status is. They don't think they understand it, or they think they understand it, but this is a challenge to it.
What's going to happen to me?
What's going to happen to me? And they've got a husband and children, or a wife and children, and there's people relying on them, and there's so many different narratives that come to the table. Helping, and that's a matter of perspective sometimes. Helping parties understand the perspectives of the other parties in the conversation is really, really important. So a colleague of mine tells sort of an apocryphal story, I think, but it may or may not have happened, I'm not sure. But he tells the story of a friend of his who had a family business, and one day he calls his son into the office, and the son comes into the office, and sitting on the desk are two baseball hats. And on the one baseball hat it says Dad, and on the other baseball hat it says Boss. And so the son comes in, he says, "Why do you have two hats on your desk, Dad?" And the dad says, "Well," and he puts on the first hat that says Boss, and he says, "You know, Billy, you're lazy, you don't show up for work on time, you're a detriment to all the other employees, you're fired." And the son's taken back, and he looks down and says, "Well, what's the other hat for?" And so the dad takes off the boss hat, puts on the dad hat, comes around, puts his arm around his son and says, "Son, I hear you had a bad day at work today. Do you want to go get a beer?" Knowing where the message is coming from is really important, right? We'll take the message from Dad maybe, but we won't necessarily take the message from the boss. And we'll take the message from the boss, but not necessarily from Dad.
Yes.
And that, or Mom, or, you know, whoever. Understanding the perspective is really, really important. And then we have to put some effort into that as well. So
that's a powerful example.
Yeah. It's not just how we communicate, it's communicating and understanding how the message will be received too. So that's why we use different methods of social media, right?
Yes, we do.
Yeah.
Well, those were great words of wisdom to
Thank you,
end
Tracy.
on. So start.
Get
Guys,
started.
Hear us? Just start. Start anywhere that you feel comfortable, wherever you're strong, just start.
And I know that sounds, you know, again, kind of trite, but it really is. You hit the nail on the head. You said, you know, I'm a wife in farming, and it's so complex, and I don't know where to start, so I never do start. don't do that.
Yeah.
Start where your strengths are. Start where you have comfort.
Well, and anything too, I found in business, or let's say you're getting started with your work day and you have a mountain of work and it's overwhelming, but you know what? If you just grab a small task and start and then tackle that one, and you can work your way up. And I would imagine it's the same thing with succession planning. Why don't I just make one task to find a book and read? Go on YouTube, listen to the Impact Farming Show, a small task to start, and then you get an idea, and then all of a sudden you're down that path.
Was it William McChrystal, the admiral in the U.S., or the general in the U.S. In Iraq? He wouldn't have been an admiral then, so the general. I don't think there's a body of water there. He wrote a book, was on a speaking tour, and he starts off this, and it all came from a commencement presentation he did, and he basically said, you want to live a good life? Get up every morning and make your bed. Make the bed. Start the day off with a success from the beginning. Because at the end of the day, you're going to come back to that and go, oh, a nice crisp bed to hop into, right?
Nice.
It's the little things that we do each day that add up to success. So starting with little things is okay.
Perfect.
Whatever your make the bed moment is in your estate planning or your farm transition planning, start there and make that a routine. So
perfect.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for all of that. I appreciate it. It's always great chatting with you.
Good.
If our audience wants to connect with you and stay up to date on the upcoming book, or even you have a book out right now, where can they find you?
I do. So the book that's out right now is called The Naked Opus, Growing Your Family Wealth for the Long Term. It's a strategic estate planning book, not technical. It's a narrative. It's intended for families and their advisors. This book is available across Canada and online, so across Canada in Chapters Indigo stores and also online at Amazon.ca, and you can get Kobo and Kindle versions of both ebooks at both locations. The new book, tentatively spring of 2020. I don't have a title yet for it, except that it's going to be the 20 estate planning mistakes that most people make, something like that. You can follow me on Twitter at The Estate Lawyer, so all one word, but The Estate Lawyer, or at Naked Opus, which is the book Twitter feed as well. And I believe it's the same Twitter feed. At FEA Advisor on Instagram. So FE Advisor, ADVISOR.
And what we'll do is we'll link to all of those platforms. We'll include that in the show notes for this episode so they can connect with you. Perfect.
Over the next 6 months, I'm going to be throwing up articles on various different sites that are based on each error that is made. So there'll be a series of 20 articles coming up on different websites across the internet. So if you go to those social media sites, you'll see those links come up. You can also go to the book website, which is www.nakedopus.com, and a lot of those articles will also be posted there as well. Okay, Chris, that was absolutely fantastic. Thank you for sharing that. If people want to get a copy of your book, you have this one out right now. And you have one coming out shortly. Where can they connect with you? Where can they find out more about the book? Okay, so the book is The Naked Opus, Growing Your Family Wealth for the Long Term. It is available across Canada in Chapters Indigo stores. It is also available online at chaptersindigo.ca. You can also go to Amazon.ca to get a copy of the book, and ebook versions are available on both websites. The new book, and I'm still working on the title, so we're super early here. That'll be available in the spring. It's going to be essentially, the subtitle is going to be 20 Common Estate Planning Mistakes Everybody Makes. I haven't figured out what the hook title will be yet. Stay tuned. Stay tuned. But what I will be doing between now and the goal is in April, between now and April, is that I will be releasing each of the 20 common causes on the various different social media platforms I have. So you can follow that at FEA Advisor on Twitter, so at FEADVISOR, or at The Estate Lawyer, also on Twitter, or if you're on Instagram, at FEA Advisor on Instagram. And you can also go to the webpage for the book, for this book, which is www.nakedopus.com. I'll be posting those up. I'll be releasing them in a variety of other online media as well. So I publish to advisor.ca and some other online magazines. I really invite your comments on it. Like if you see a posted mistake that's been made and you go, oh my gosh, that actually happened to me, or without naming names, I'd be more than happy to connect with you and share with me, how that affected your planning, how that affected your mindset, and what maybe could be done about it. Because I'm going to try and incorporate that into the chapters as I go along too.
Oh, excellent!
Just little sidebars where somebody has shared a similar story. So if you see something that you feared or you experienced that resonated with you, please, I would love to get the feedback. So probably the social media is the best way to catch me.
Perfect. And we'll include links to your platforms, all your social media platforms on the show page for this episode. So they can connect with you there.
Tremendous.
Thank you again.
Thank you again, Tracy. Yeah,
I appreciate
it's always a fabulous pleasure and privilege to be here on this show with you. So,
thank you.
Yeah.
And thank you guys for joining us this week on the Impact Farming Show. See you next time.
Take care.
You've been listening to Impact Farming. For more great episodes and articles designed to help you manage and grow your farming operation, head on over to farmmarketer.com. Don't forget to sign up while you're there. We will see you on the next episode.